It's legendary, yet almost nobody remembers what really happened in those fateful 14 seconds. Picture this, it's March 16, 1957. Perry Como's just capped off another flawlessly polished live show. The studio lights dim, the orchestra fades, and instead of the expected closing bow, something unprecedented unfolds. Viewers at home gasp when this mild-mannered crooner, known for his calm, genteel charm, suddenly leaps into a pool fully clothed. The cameras linger. The audience is stunned. In that brief, spontaneous plunge, everything we thought we knew about Perry Como is called into question. Was it pure showmanship, a calculated stunt, or a glimpse of a man desperate to break free from the golden cage fame had built around him? That single clip has become the stuff of television folklore. Fans rewind, hoping to catch every droplet of water glinting under the lights. Skeptics scoff, it must be staged, but dig deeper, and you find a story far richer, more unsettling, even heartbreaking, because behind those 14 seconds lies a life brimming with contradictions. The same man who could silence an arena with his buttery baritone was haunted by rage behind the wheel. The same performer who radiated warmth on screen secretly derided his own biggest hits as crap. And the same husband who adored his wife, his rock, would file for divorce as illness crept into their final years together. In the next few minutes, we're peeling back every layer. From Perry's humble childhood in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, to the barber's chair where he first discovered the power of a single melody. We'll trace how a 28-a-week radio gig led to an RCA contract that would make him the highest-paid man on television, and then trap him in a world of scripted smiles and canned applause. We'll reveal the fear that gripped him each time the cameras rolled, and the fierce loyalty of the lifeline who saved his career, his wife, Roselle. Along the way, you'll hear the whispered rumors of backstage betrayals, family feuds that ignited in courtrooms, and the final shattering twist no biography ever dared to mention. So go ahead, rewatch that clip. Watch his fingers tense, his eyes flash. Notice the split-second hesitation before he leaps. Because once you know what really drove Perry Como to jump, not onto that set, but into every turn his life took, you'll never see those 14 seconds the same way again. Rewind beyond those 14 seconds, and you'll find a story that began decades earlier in a tiny winter coal mining town where every family heartbeat pulsed with hope and hardship amidst smoke and soot. Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, 1920. His parents, Pietro and Libera, left a struggling farm in Italy for the promise of America. They arrived with nothing but a battered trunk, a handful of dollars, and a dream. In their modest remote boarding house, 13 children crowded the rooms, and the air was thick with the smell of bread baking and hearts full of aspiration. At night, under a dim oil lamp, the Como children huddled around a well-worn stove, reciting prayers in Italian and clutching at melodies from the old country. Growing up, young Perry spoke only Italian at home. When he stepped into the schoolhouse at age 6, the words floating across the chalkboard were as foreign as the flicker of an early movie reel. He learned English in fits and starts, piecing together simple sentences while classmates giggled at his accent. Yet books and rhymes offered a portal to understanding, and by the time he turned 8, Perry was reading hunter's tales and fairy stories aloud, his classmates mesmerized by a voice smooth beyond his years. But money was scarce and responsibility arrived early. At 10 he swept floors and polished mirrors in Steve Fragapane's barber shop before school, and returned each afternoon to snip hair for 50 cents a week. He carried a wooden box to stand on, his small frame just tall enough to reach the barber's chair. Before dawn he stoked the stove, lighting the place with promise. After dusk he read sheet music by lantern, teaching himself chords on a second-hand organ his father had bought for $3. Every spare cent fed the household, but every spare moment fed his dreams. His baritone first reverberated across steam-heated floors, crooning love songs to patrons who paid extra just for his melodies. Word spread, the singing barber was more than a novelty. By 13 he rented his own chair for $125 a week, an astonishing sum in Depression-era America. But his heart wasn't in craft alone. When the Canonsburg Italian band called, he picked up a trombone, and later a guitar, filling town halls with the same effortless grace he would one day bring to sold-out arenas. Music was his escape, the barber pole merely a stepping stone. As the 20s roared into the 30s, Perry's reputation outgrew Canonsburg. A radio audition in Cleveland changed everything. The odds were stacked. 30 hopeful crooners, one chance to impress. He stepped to the microphone, heart racing, and sang a tune in Italian, then switched seamlessly to English. Silence, then applause. A bandleader, Freddie Carlo, offered him $28 a week, the same pay he once scoffed at after closing his shop. Roselle, his steady confidante and the only person who dared call him out on his fears, urged him to leap. "Trust the music," she whispered. So he closed the red barber stripe behind him and boarded a bus bound for uncertainty. Those early touring days were brutal. Perry slept in bus bunks and ate canned chili under flickering neon signs. The volume was too loud, the crowds unpredictable, and every night brought a new challenge: vanishing sheet music, temperamental bandmates, and venues where lights cut off at 10. But every time he sang, something magical happened. His smooth baritone carved through the noise and wrapped quiet around every listener. Letters poured in an elderly couple who found solace in his voice after losing a son, soldiers on leave who dropped notes in hotels praising his calm amidst chaos. That feedback was a lifeline, anchoring him when doubt crept in. Yet while applause fueled him, the industry demanded more. In 1936, a Decca Records executive dismissed him as just another Bing Crosby clone. Perry felt the dagger twist. He was talented, but he wasn't the man everyone wanted him to be. It took the unflinching support of his bandleader, Ted Williams, to save his first recording session. Williams refused to record without Perry's silky voice, and Decca relented. Historians would later label him the heir to Crosby's throne, but in those moments he felt like a fraud. The label stuck, haunting him in later interviews when he would mock his own biggest hits as garbage. His demons were born out of praise. On stage, he created an oasis of calm, every note measured, every smile rehearsed, every gesture completely choreographed. Cameras saw a man serene enough to calm nerves and inspire awe. The pool jump wasn't the first time his veneer cracked. It was the moment millions saw. Reaching the mid-1940s, Perry's career intersected with history's darkest chapters. World War II raged abroad as victory songs and worried prayers filled American airwaves. While millions enlisted, Perry's voice became a beacon for those on the home front. In 1943, at age 31, he received an offer to launch his own radio show on CBS, the Chesterfield Supper Club. The pay was modest, barely enough to replace his barber's income, but the promise of creative control was priceless. Roselle, now his partner in every risk, pressed him to accept. "This could be our chance," she urged, eyes gleaming with hope. He agreed, sealing a deal that would define a generation's soundtrack. On March 12, he stepped into the CBS studios, armed only with a pocketful of sheet music and a dream. The inaugural broadcast was a marvel of simplicity, a 15-minute slot live from New York backed by a small orchestra. Under the warm glow of studio lights, Perry greeted listeners as if they were dinner guests, polite, genuine, inviting. He spun classics, introduced new songs, and shared light banter with announcers. Listeners lit cigarettes in their kitchens or zipped up coats around bunkers, leaning close to the radio, captivated by his fluid voice and soothing cadence. Letters poured in, soldiers writing from Pacific Islands, mothers tuning in while tending blacked-out windows, teenagers sneaking radios under bedsheets after curfew. The Supper Club was more than a program. It became a ritual. Buoyed by its success, Perry eyed bigger stages. In December 1948, NBC tested television cameras in the radio studio, broadcasting the Chesterfield Supper Club to a handful of families with experimental sets. The results were electrifying. Viewers called the network, begging for more. Visual had transformed the experience. Audiences could finally see Perry's trademark cardigan, his easy smile, the way he clasped hands with each guest. Television wasn't just sound anymore, it was spectacle. NBC fast-tracked a full time slot, and by September 1949, the weekly show went live nationwide. Suddenly, Perry Como was not just a voice in the dark. He was an icon in living rooms across America. The transition wasn't seamless. Early TV cameras were unforgiving, capturing every beat of sweat and tremble of the microphone. Perry described his first tapings as awkward, confessing later that he imagined the lens as a quiet friend in his living room to calm his nerves. Roselle sat in the front row, offering reassuring smiles and a quick wave. Producers experimented with set design, a cozy fireplace backdrop, wicker chairs arranged to look like a parlor, discreet spotlights that softened shadows. Every detail mattered. A fluffed cushion or a misplaced prop could break the illusion of comfort. Costume designers crafted simple yet elegant outfits, no flash, no glitz, reinforcing Perry's everyman persona. Ratings soared. By 1955, his show ranked in Nielsen's top 10, outpacing most scripted dramas and variety hours. He won Emmy Awards annually from 55 to 59 and earned a Peabody for excellence in broadcasting. But with popularity came pressure. Sponsors clamored for product mentions. Network executives demanded themed episodes. Writers pitched whimsical skits that clashed with Perry's held-brow style. Underneath the calm exterior, frustration festered. In letters to Roselle, he confessed feeling like monkey on a swing, doing tricks for applause. The man who once shunned awards now felt trapped by them. Still, he pressed on. His most famous triumph arrived on March 14, 1958, when Catch a Falling Star garnered the first-ever gold record from the RIAA. Though the accolade recognized 1 million sales, Perry publicly joked about the song's silliness, performing a parody version on stage to mask his discomfort. He craved artistic authenticity, not commercial trophies. That same year, he sealed an unprecedented 12-year contract with NBC, worth an estimated $25 million. For the first time, he held production control. Any episode cost overruns came out of his pocket, but any savings were his to keep. He renamed his company Roncom, a tribute to son Ronnie, and took pride in shepherding each show from script to air. Yet as cameras churned out popular episodes, Perry's soul ached for simplicity. The high-priced studios, glistening lights, and adoring crowds became gilded bars. When NBC built a brand new color soundstage just for his program, he marveled at the technology, then admitted he preferred the modest black and white broadcasts that felt more intimate. Behind the scenes, crew members whispered about his nightly temper, road rage at pickup trucks delaying his journey home, curt exchanges with writers who suggested yet another dance number. It was as if the serene public figure and the restless private man coexisted in eternal conflict. Family life offered refuge. In 1955, the birth of daughter Terry brought new purpose. Perry installed a nursery near his home office so he could dash from script notes to bedtime stories. Adopted son David followed in 1937, and older brother Ronnie's growing ambitions earned Perry cautious pride. Roselle managed their estate with quiet efficiency, ensuring contracts, taxes, and investments ran smoothly. She was the foundation beneath his soaring public image. Without her steady hand, many insiders believe his career, already mirroring a runaway train, would have careened off the rails. Just when Perry seemed invincible, fate delivered another curveball. In the early 60s, ratings began to slip as musical taste shifted. Rock and roll beckoned a new generation. Teen idols eclipsed smooth crooners. Executives fretted reality shows and game programs would edge out traditional variety hours. Always pragmatic, Perry negotiated a shift from weekly half-hour slots to monthly specials. He traded quantity for quality, squeezing the creative core he craved into fewer broadcasts. His final regular show aired in 1963, closing an iconic chapter on primetime television. The move stunned fans but granted him the freedom he'd sought since his pool jump epiphany. Time to breathe, time to be a husband and father again. Free from network's demands exactly 14 years after his final weekly broadcast, Perry Como's presence on television felt more myth than reality. Yet he continued crafting monthly specials that shimmered with the same easy warmth audiences craved. In 1967, he unveiled Perry Como's Golden Records, a retrospective that mixed archival performances with new duets, subtly reminding fans that his voice remained undiminished by the years. Gone were the rigid half-hour slots and sponsor-driven skits. In their place were leisurely segments filmed on location, sunlit patios in Florida, cozy Italian kitchens where he cooked alongside Roselle, backstage peeks at Vegas rehearsals. Each special became a vignette, a personal letter from a man who had scaled the peaks of stardom and chosen to dwell, instead, in the valleys of genuine connection. Even as Perry leaned into authenticity, the inner tensions that simmered beneath his calm surface occasionally boiled over. Crew members recalled days when he arrived in a thunderous grip of rage, braking so hard on the soundstage drive that camera cables snapped, hurling equipment into carts. He would bark terse instructions at costume attendants, then vanish into his dressing room, only to reemerge 15 minutes later with a disarming grin, apologizing to any bystanders. This volatility wasn't born of ego, but of fear that each misstep might shatter the persona he had so carefully built. A single muffed note in a live broadcast could feel like a personal betrayal, and only months earlier he had whispered to Roselle, "I refuse to slip on live television ever again." His disdain for the trappings of fame extended to award ceremonies, where he was a perennial nominee. When the Recording Academy presented him with 5 consecutive Emmys, he sent a modest wire of thanks, no acceptance speech. When RCA Victor insisted he accept the first ever gold record, he ambled onstage, gave a cursory nod, then announced he'd rather be back home cutting hair in Canonsburg. Technicians recall the bemused hush that followed, an icon ridiculing his own icon status. But to Perry it was honest. He wanted artistry, not accolades. He often said that awards were trophies in a glass case collecting dust and disappointment. By the 1970s, the world around him was shifting faster than he could sing. Color television was ubiquitous, music videos were born, and the vinyl era gave way to tapes. Perry recorded a handful of albums, some nostalgia-driven collections of standards, others daring covers of contemporary hits by the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel. The latter earned him curious praise. Critics acknowledged his effortless phrasing could breathe new life into familiar melodies. However, those records sold modestly compared to his mid-century chart toppers. Still, he persisted, believing that true artistry transcended sales numbers. When a record executive lamented sluggish press aisles, Perry simply shrugged, "I'm not chasing records, I'm chasing resonance." In 1974, another wave of change pummeled his personal life. Roselle's health declined after a minor stroke, and Perry, ever devoted, scaled back appearances. He canceled a lucrative Las Vegas residency, one that promised $150,000 per week, so he could remain by her side. They hosted their last joint Christmas special that year, filming in Jerusalem beneath olive trees and pale blue Byzantine skies. Viewers worldwide felt the solemn beauty of his voice echoing in ancient stone courtyards. Critics hailed it as his most transcendent performance. Yet Perry confided to staff that he only treasured 2 things above applause: Roselle's smile and the peace of walking home together each night. When Roselle passed in 1998 after 65 years of marriage, something fractured within Perry. The same steadfast man who once leapt into a television pool to reclaim control now found himself adrift. He retreated to their Florida home, surrounded by yachting trophies, family photographs, and unopened fan mail. Though he outlived her by 3 years, Perry never returned to the microphone in any public sense. Friends described him as a ghost of his former self, haunted by memories of laughter and duets that would never play again. During those final years, Perry's iron health waned. Reports of Alzheimer's emerged, though his publicist insisted otherwise. When gossip columnists suggested his memory lapses were a ploy to avoid contracts, longtime colleagues bristled at the slander. Perry had spent a lifetime seeking privacy. In his last act he hoarded it greedily. Few saw him and fewer heard his voice. On May 12, 2001 he died quietly in his favorite chair, a single smile flickering as he drifted away. The world mourned a man who never chased fame yet became one of its most enduring icons. After his death the family disputes poured into courthouses. His children, Terry and Ronnie, locked horns over estate details, controversies that stained the legend of domestic harmony he had so painstakingly portrayed. Court documents revealed investments worth tens of millions, a mansion sold for record prices, and handwritten wills that hinted at resentments left unresolved. It was the final irony, a life built on control and poise, ending in legal battle over a fortune Perry never flaunted. Yet for all the discord his legend only deepened. Decades later viewers still stumble on that pool jump in late-night reruns. YouTubers dissect the 14-second clip frame by frame, marveling at the gravity-defying splash and wondering what propulsed such an act of liberation. New generations discover his Christmas tunes on TikTok, overlaying his voice on footage of snow falling. Music historians cite his phrasing as a masterclass in subtlety, contrasting with today's bombastic performances. And every holiday season, Home for the Holidays floats from speakers, reminding us that Perry Como, dresser of barbershop smocks and conqueror of primetime, crafted moments that transcend eras. Think back to the final seconds of that live broadcast, when the audience expected the customary fade out and polite bow. Instead, Perry Como defied every expectation. His feet slid off the stage, his cardigan caught on a chair, and in one fluid motion he plunged into icy water fully clothed. That moment felt absurd on the surface, but it crackled with raw tension, an outburst from a man who had spent years suppressing impulses in service of a public image. In those 14 seconds, Como revealed both his frustration with artifice and his longing for freedom. To appreciate the gravity of that leap, you have to understand the stifling routine a live variety show demanded. Every segment was mapped to the second, sponsor shoutouts, rehearsed banter, strategic applause cues. Every hand gesture was timed, every smile calibrated, and any deviation risked awkward silence that could not be edited out. While audiences believed they were witnessing effortless charm, behind the scenes the pace was punishing. Perry rehearsed for hours, tweaking his posture, perfecting a head tilt that carried warmth through the camera lens. In truth, he was a prisoner of exactness, bound by the fear that a single hesitation or extended note would shatter the illusion. On that March evening in '57, the weight of scripted perfection became unbearable, and he chose water over artifice. Critics laughed it off as a publicity stunt, a harmless whimsy befitting his gentlemanly reputation. Insiders whispered about the months before the incident tension with network brass over content, sponsor demands for lighter fare, writer notes trimming spontaneity. Those who worked with Perry recalled how he recoiled at skits that felt shallow, how applause lines inserted like speed bumps disrupted a song's natural flow. The pool jump was his unspoken declaration that no matter how many awards he won, he would never be fully comfortable inside a cage of conservative expectations. In those 14 seconds, we see a collision of two selves, the public icon revered for unflappable calm, and the private man wrestling with anxiety, regret, and a hunger for authenticity. He invites empathy while provoking discomfort. We realize that behind every polished performance lies a battle between safety and risk, a tension we encounter in our own lives each time we step beyond comfort zones. What if we all carry hidden longings we blunt with routines? What if the illusion we curate for others masks deep unrest? Perry Como was not alone in craving release, and his plunge became a universal symbol for breaking routine and seizing a moment of truth amid floodlights and rolling cameras. Today that clip enjoys a second life online. YouTubers dissect frame by frame, analyzing the angle of his arm, the splash height, the look on his conductor's face. Meme makers layer modern soundtracks from electronic beats to dramatic classical crescendos. Critics and scholars reference it in articles about media authenticity, and university courses dissect it alongside famous artistic rebellions. Yet beneath viral remixes lies a story worth re-examining. Those 14 seconds didn't just make Perry Como a legend, they crystallized an eternal paradox, the fragile line between control and chaos. Every time we replay the moment, we search for signs. Was it planned? Forced? Did he hesitate? These questions reveal our fascination with glimpses of genuine emotion. As content creators and consumers, we can draw valuable lessons from Como's spontaneous act. Rigidity breeds frustration, but a well-timed break from convention can form an unforgettable moment. Audiences crave authenticity more than polish. They need to feel a real human heartbeat. When we tap into that vulnerability, embrace imperfections rather than conceal them, we forge deeper bonds. Whether you're scripting a channel trailer or hosting a live stream, remember that your greatest strength may lie in an unexpected gesture, an unedited reaction, the moment that defies the outline. Now, as you prepare to hit play on that classic clip again, notice this. In the milliseconds before he drops, his fingers tighten on the railing, his gaze flickers to an unseen prompt, and his lips purse, not in arrogance but in resolution. Then the release, a fluid arc transforming a rehearsed closing into a personal manifesto. In those 14 seconds, Perry Como says, "I am more than my rehearsed movements. I am human, fallible, alive. I choose to forsake predictability and embrace the unknown, even if it means a shock wave across the airwaves." Ultimately, the lesson of Perry's underwater rebellion resonates far beyond studio soundstages. It speaks to anyone who has ever yearned for pure authenticity, for the courage to shatter self-imposed boundaries. 14 seconds can alter a career, redefine a legacy, and remind us that we all hold the power to make a splash. So next time you need inspiration, revisit that clip, watch closely, listen deeper. Let those seconds of submerged truth ignite your own plunge into authenticity, and a story that echoes through generations.